I'm ready to get this guy connected. Because by the time we're done here, we will walk through the Cisco wireless LAN controller out-of-box experience. First off, the flyby plan. It is not uncommon, actually it's very common in Cisco enterprise environments to have your wireless LAN controller connected right here up at your distribution layer. In our 3-tier hierarchy, this is our access, distribution, and if you're large enough, you'll end up having the core. But in this case, we have a collapsed core design where the distribution layer is also accessing as the core layer, and we're going to plug our wireless LAN controller in right here because you'll have all the wireless access points feeding back to this central location. Now, I'm going to choose Fast Ethernet 2/0/10. So let's zoom into this a little bit more. First off, on the back of this guy, you'll notice that we have our typical ports, and I'm going to just use port 1 over here to connect to the switch. But you'll also see that we have our console port, standard console connection. We're going to need to use that to get this guy configured for that out-of-box experience. So let's jump on over to our switches here. I'm going to take this guy, plug him from port 1 click, into port 10. That would be right about there on the switch. I'm waiting for a light. And we need to connect him to the power. One thing, that this wireless LAN controller makes a great lab controller, but know that it uses a very special power brick and a very special connector that you'll often, if it doesn't come with it, you'll often end up spending more for this little power brick than you will for the device itself, just because everybody on the used market knows it's a hot commodity. So there we go. I see the link powering on. This thing's powering on. Let's get our console cable connected here. There we go. I can see it going through the boot process right now. Let's watch it as it loads. Oh, there we go. I'm going to actually click in here and hit escape. The reason I'm doing that is because I want to use this option. By the way, if you grab these things off of eBay, which again, I encourage you to set up a physical lab environment. There's so much while you're getting started in the Cisco world you can learn by physically having equipment. I'll grab my ASA firewall. By physically having equipment, plugging it all together and making real stuff really work, right? So I'm going to choose, this is how you clear the config. If it has a password that you don't know, just reboot it, and then during the boot process, I'm going to hit 5 to clear the configuration out, wipe it out. That way, it'll walk us through the setup process when we first get started. You can see it cleared the configuration. It's restarting, going back through that boot process. This time, I'm going to let it do its thing. There we go. The first prompt that we come to is, would we like to terminate auto install? And the answer to that is yes, we would. Auto install is a process where the controller can find its configuration from a server. And this is if you have a bunch of controllers, you're kind of configuring them dynamically. So we'll hit yes, we want to terminate. And now it's going to walk us through its little startup wizard. This is that out-of-box experience. It's saying, what would you like the name of this to be? And by default, it's Cisco _ and the last 6 of the MAC address of it. I'll just call it, let's call it Jeremy WLC. When you get your own wireless LAN controller, you can do that. Administrative username, we'll make it admin. Password, we'll make it Cisco. Okay, what is the management interface IP address? Now, I'm plugging this guy into VLAN 10 behind me, so I'm just going to grab an IP address from there. We'll use where the switches leave off, 10.16.0.5, I believe. We've got gateway 1, 2, 3, 4, yep, 5. Mask, there we go, class C. Default gateway 10.16.0.1. VLAN identifier. Okay, if you are running a wireless LAN controller, 98.921% of the time, you're going to have a tagged interface. That is, you're going to link it up to a trunk because all the WAPs are coming in with CapWAP, right? That tunnel interface where they're sending all the data from the wireless access point to the controller, and the controller is feeding that into the LAN on a variety of VLANs, because most of the time you'll map your SSIDs, your wireless network names, to VLAN. So the public would be VLAN 50, the clients would be VLAN 30, and all that kind of stuff. So that's where the trunk interface comes in handy. Just for the ease of configuration of this, I'm just going to leave the management interface untagged because I'm making this guy a member of VLAN 10 as an access port. So it's saying which port number on there from 1 to 8 is the management interface. So hang on, just so you can see. This is the back of the controller right there. That's the 8 individual ports that I have. I have it connected to port 1 right now, so I'm going to say, yes, I will use port 1 as my management interface. Now it's saying the management interface DHCP server IP address. It's asking for the IP address of the DHCP server so that it can use it for DHCP relay. It can relay those DHCP messages from the clients to a DHCP server. So we'll give it the router. Now it's saying the AP manager interface IP address. So this is the IP address that I'm going to have the controller using to manage the wireless access points. So there's one, the .5, that I'm going to use to manage the controller. It's saying, well, what do you want to give the controller to manage the WAPs? And that's going to go back to our IP addressing scheme. I'd say 10.16.0.10 is fine. We'll let it use that. AP Manager Interface DHCP server, same one. Yep. Virtual Gateway IP address. This one is interesting. This is probably the one that has caused the most confusion in all Cisco wireless history. Cisco had this brilliant idea to say, let's give the wireless LAN controller kind of its own identity. So you know, for instance, most common use of this IP address. The wireless LAN controller is getting the DHCP requests from the wireless clients, the laptops, the smartphones, right? It's like, okay, I got it. I'm going to the DHCP server. I'm getting the response back. Okay, I've got the IP address. I'm going to now send that to the individual devices. Who am I going to pretend to be? That's where it's the virtual IP address. It's like, because it could be on a variety of different VLANs. You might have, you know, many different wireless networks. So this IP address, most of the time, the original Cisco documentation said, just make this 1.1.1.1. It's actually one of the most common things. Until they actually published an article, they're like, oops, that's a real IP address. So use, their recommendation now is to use 192.0.2.1 or something that you'll never use and that would never be in use on the internet. This is not a private address, right? Because you don't want to overlap a private range you might use. This is actually one of the there's another RFC, the number escapes me, that has, you know, these are ranges designated for labs. That's one of them, right? Now it's coming up and saying, okay, you've got the mobility/RF group name. It's starting to get into the setup of some of the more advanced features already, even while you're initially configuring the controller. Mobility is the ability to move from wireless access point to wireless access point uninterrupted, and you need to create a group to do that. So we'll just call this, you know, in order to get through the wizard, we'll just call this, CBT group, right? It says, okay, what's your first wireless network that you want to create? And I'll just call this the network, right? Sounds good. Now it's starting to go through, okay, do you want to have DHCP bridging mode? This means instead of the controller relaying the DHCP request to the DHCP server, do you just want it to be invisible and allow those to pass through? I'm actually going to say, because of this really basic setup that I'm doing, that's not normal, by the way. Normally you would say, no, let it relay, because you got VLANs and all that kind of stuff. In this case, I'm just like, I'm just showing you the basics of how to get this set up. So yeah, we'll just let it, you know, be invisible. Let it go on through. It says, warning, you know, this isn't we will have no internal DHCP. There's no relay that's going to happen. Do you want to allow static IP addresses? Meaning your wireless clients can actually have static addresses. We'll say sure. And now, I mean, we're getting into we're getting into the grid. Let's just say no. What's your country code? Because there's different frequencies that are allowed in different countries. I'm in the United States. Yes, yes, yes. Now keep in mind, I almost said I'm old. I'm not old, but that guy is. So there's a lot of wireless standards that have come out since these guys, A, B, and G. This is, again, an old controller, old software edition, but it still looks and feels the same today. Do you want auto radio frequency, where it adjusts the frequencies automatically? Sure. NTP server, sure. pool.ntp.org. We'll type that. 4.1.2.3. How about that? Pull it once every 3,600 seconds. And yes, that configuration is correct. Type that in, hit enter. The controller will now reboot, and now we can access it from the GUI, the graphic interface, and that's where most people begin with it. Now, the reason I showed that to you is I know a lot of you are grabbing equipment that you can use in your own lab so you can get some hands-on experience with this. That's one of the puzzle pieces you have to do before you can get this guy configured to the GUI. A lot of the documentation you show will just show you, hey, you're in the GUI. And I've seen a lot of people struggle with like, how do I even get there? I've got this box. That's how you do it. You've now seen how to walk through the wireless LAN controller out-of-box experience. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.